What is up, guys? So if you watched my last video, you saw me talk about how I had only had one thing break on this car and that I had to replace. Now if you didn't catch it also, I wasn't saying that that was the only thing that I've replaced or have done to the car in terms of maintenance. I've done quite a bit of stuff to this car in terms of maintenance, but the thing is, it was mostly preventative maintenance, so it wasn't necessarily things that I had to replace because they were broken. There were just things I wanted to replace to just get out of the way, or because it was reaching 100,000 miles and I just need to get a service done because it probably wasn't changed before. So yeah, this isn't a thing. These aren't things that I had to replace because they break. These are things that I just wanted to get done so that I can keep the car in good shape, so that it'll continue treating me well with no issues or anything like that. So if you didn't know, I have a 2009 BMW 328i with 111,000 miles on it. I bought it when it had 93,000 miles on it, so I've had it to last around 18,000 miles, and I've had it for almost 2 years now. So I'm just going to give you guys a full breakdown of all the parts or services I have had replaced or done on this car. I've actually been keeping track of every single part that I buy or service that I have performed in my car on my phone. So I have a complete list here, and I'm going to go through this list stating what the service was or what part I bought and how much it costs. So let's get started. So I'm going to start off with oil changes. I've spent $300 on 4 oil changes over the last 2 years owning this car. I usually do oil changes around 5,000 miles, and I do my own oil changes. Now, I use this oil change kit that I get from FCP Euro that comes with all the oil, the gaskets, a new filter, and a new crusher washer that you use for the drain plug. And that whole service kit costs $60, and I've been using that every single time I do my oil changes. Now, if you were to take your BMW to like a local Euro shop and have them do your oil change, it'll be more around $100, $120 depending. So this is one way I can save on oil changes, is by doing it myself, which I recommend you doing too. So the next thing is I have done 2 alignments to this car, and the total cost for those 2 alignments is $270. Each of them were around 120. I think one was 120 and then the other was 135. I had one done when I first got the car because I didn't really know when the last time the alignment was done on the car, so I just got one when I got my first set of wheels, and then I got my second one when I installed my coilovers. And obviously when you install your coilovers you mess up your alignment, so I had that done, and the total cost was $270. Now this next one is the one I talked about in my last video, my intelligent battery sensor malfunction, and I had to replace that. That cost me $300, like I said in my last video. Next, one of the first things I also did to my car in terms of maintenance was I got new rotors and I got new brake pads. Now, this is something that I didn't have to do, I just did it because I didn't really know when the last time the rotors were changed or when the last time the brake pads were changed. So I just decided to get new rotors and new brake pads, so I am able to keep track when I'm owning the car, so that I know how old the brake pads are and how long ago the rotors were changed. And just so I'm like comfortable with the fact that I have brand new rotors and I have brand new brakes, and I just won't have to worry about it anytime in the future. But anyway, so the total cost for 4 new rotors and a whole new set of brake pads came out to be $460. The next thing I have, also one of the first things I did in terms of preventative maintenance, I replaced the Vanos Solenoids. I had just done some research and I heard that they can cause some rough idling, and that's what I had on my BMW when I first got it. So I figured if I replace those, I won't have to replace them later, and maybe it'll fix the idling. It didn't really fix the idling, unfortunately, but I mean, at this point, like, I'm just used to it, or honestly, I don't even notice it when I start up the car anymore. But yeah, I spent $160 on new Vanos Solenoids. Now this next one isn't really a maintenance issue or maintenance repair. It was just kind of like a freak accident. So I had my rear windshield smashed or shattered by, I don't know, some object. I don't even know. Like, I came out one morning to go to work and my rear windshield was just completely shattered. Thankfully it was held on by my window tint, so it didn't like shatter into the car. It just was shattered, but the window tint was holding all the little tiny pieces together. I'll actually show a picture right here so you guys can see. And it looked like just some object had fallen, I don't know, fallen from the sky. It was just, there's a hole on the side of my windshield that looked like an object like fell through and just was what's caused the whole windshield to shatter. So yeah, that happened, and that, like I said, it really isn't a maintenance thing. It's just kind of like a freak accident. But That cost me $414 for a new windshield and some new window tint. But that really isn't something you have to worry about. Like, that was just kind of a freak accident. But maybe if that happens to you, by any chance, something happens and you shatter your windshield, that's how much it'll cost. Now, the next thing I got was a new set of ignition coils. Again, this was something that I didn't have to do, but I just did it just so I could have maybe some spare ignition coils just in case one of the ones I have in my car already goes bad. So in total, for a new set of ignition coils, I spent $260. Now, this next thing is easily the most expensive maintenance service I have done on this car, and that was a transmission fluid flush, and that cost me $600. Now, before I actually did the transmission fluid flush, I was doing some research just to see how much it would cost, and most people were saying that if I took it to a BMW dealership, I would be spending around $1,200. So $600 is really not that bad compared to what I would have been paying if I took it to a dealership. Again, I just took it to a local Euro shop that had a good reputation, so I just took it to them. I did that one because BMW says that your transmission fluid will last forever, but most people were saying just replace it at 100,000 miles, so that's what I did. I just got that out of the way so I don't have to worry about it for another 100,000 miles. Next service I had done was the second most expensive service, which was transfer case service. That cost me $376. Now, that was just one of the things that I needed to get out of the way because it most likely wasn't ever done throughout the whole life of this car. And if you don't know, the transfer case is actually only on the all-wheel drive BMWs. It isn't on the rear-wheel drive, so you don't have to worry about this if you don't have a rear-wheel drive car. Only if you have an all-wheel drive car, which I do. So you're gonna want to pay attention to that if you do have it. And yeah, it was never replaced, so they recommended that I service it, and so I did, and that's how much it costs. Now, the next service I had done was a brake service. I changed the fluids, and they just inspected all the brakes, and that cost me $179. That's just one of the things you do every once in a while. It's not because something's wrong, you just have to do it, or it's recommended that you do it. So I did it so far once owning the car, and like I said, it cost me $179. Also, with the brake service, this next thing is actually another thing that I kind of forgot that broke, but it wasn't a serious issue. Or it was kind of serious, but it wasn't like it would affect like the functionality of the car. Possibly. If I didn't fix it in time, maybe it would have affected the functionality, but I had a leaking brake bleeder screw where the brake fluid was leaking out of the screw somehow, I don't know. But I had that fixed in addition to getting the brake service. So that cost me an additional $44, which was not even that much. So again, I just kind of getting lucky. This was just something small, thankfully, that didn't immediately affect the functionality and that didn't cost that much. Now, this next thing I replaced was the valve cover gasket. I had a oil leak on the exhaust manifold, on the side where the exhaust manifold is on the engine, and I could tell there was a leak there, so I had to replace the valve cover gasket. And I did this one myself, so it only cost me $40 for the new gaskets, and that was it. If I would have taken this to the shop or the BMW dealership, I would have spent easily $600 to $1,000 on this for labor because it was pretty labor intensive. It was the most difficult thing I had to replace on my car. So far, it was just rough, but I did it, and I saved myself hundreds of dollars by doing it. The next thing I replaced was another gasket. It was the oil filter housing gasket. I replaced it because I did have a small oil leak on the oil filter housing gasket, and that is a common place where oil leaks. So I did replace it. I replaced it myself, and it cost me $12 for the gasket. I remember the shop I take my car to, they quoted me I think $600 for that. So I just saved myself $588. Now the next gasket, or gaskets, I'm just going to put these two together, were the Valvetronic motor gasket and the eccentric shaft sensor seal. I had oil leaks from both those spots, so that's why I had to replace them. And together, those cost me $34, and I replaced it myself. And the most recent piece I replaced was the coolant hose flange that's on the front of the engine. I replaced it because I was going to take out that coolant hose because it was in the way when I was trying to get the oil filter housing gasket off. And I unscrewed it a little bit because I was trying to take it out, but I was kind of scared that, I don't know, something would happen. So I unscrewed it a little bit and I pulled it like a tiny bit out. but then I just decided to put it back in and I screwed it back together. But then it started leaking tiny bits of coolant around the flange there. So I figured I need to change it, and when I looked online, that was like a common thing that will break after a certain amount of time. And sure enough, when I took it out, that plastic flange that was in there had just broken in half, which is why it was leaking. And so I got a new aluminum one that will probably never break, and that cost me $40, and I replaced everything myself. And since I replaced it, it hasn't been leaking. So the total amount I've spent on maintenance for this car so far comes out to be $3,226. Now, this is over the course of the past 2 years owning the car. I know people who have spent that amount within the first few months owning a BMW. So you may think that's a lot, but just to put that in perspective, this is the total amount I've accumulated in costs over the past 2 years and 18,000 miles with this car. And like I said, most of this stuff I didn't have to do necessarily. I just did it as a form of preventative maintenance so that something wouldn't break as a result of that part not being replaced down the road, and just because I want to keep this car in the best shape I can possibly so that it continues running and being problem free in terms of nothing breaking. And most of those things I did myself, which saved me probably around, I want to say, another few thousand. So this is why I definitely recommend you do all the maintenance yourself, or as much as you can possible if you have the tools. That cost I stated should be around maybe $6,000-7,000 if you included labor, if I didn't do it myself. So there you have it, guys. That's the total amount I've spent on maintenance for this car so far. Now, it is only 2 years in. I still have a few more years to go here. So if you are looking to buy a BMW, specifically the 328i, like the one I have from the E90 generation, I hope I gave you guys some insight into how much it really costs to maintain a BMW. This is why, like I said in my previous video, you need to be financially ready before you just go out and buy a BMW, because they still are costly to maintain. Even if nothing breaks and you just want to do preventative maintenance, they're still going to cost you more than if they were just a regular Nissan, Toyota, or Honda. I bought this car with the expectation of not doing a bunch of mods, which is another reason or another factor in maintenance that probably wouldn't need to have been done if I didn't do any mods. But I did mods. I'm not one of those people in the car culture that's just all about like horsepower and just going all out. I just wanted to have fun customizing my car to my liking, and while also keeping the reliability, since it is my daily. I needed this thing working as often as possible, and so far it's been doing just that over the last 2 years owning it, and I am more than happy with it. I hope it continues this way, but you never know. Like I said, anything could happen. But anyway, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.